It's fascinating. I can give you a ton of examples of artists that went to New York and showed at the time with Peggy Guggenheim and then Betty Parsons. Arthur B. Carls from the Academy is an amazing modernist. He taught a lot of different artists. He was part of the Stiglitz group with George O'Keeffe and John Marin in New York. And all those artists bring huge money. He decided to come back to Philadelphia.
Welcome to the Famous or Forgotten podcast, the making or missing of great artists. Welcome to this episode of the Famous or Forgotten podcast. If this is your first time joining us, Alex and I started this project a couple months ago because we wanted to explore the question of why do some artists make it and some artists don't. Fully, admittedly, out in the open, Alex and I are unapologetic capitalists. The art world is not our primary thing. We had both acquired some pieces that we liked, and they were from artists that no one had ever heard of. And we kind of thought, well, why do some make it and some don't? And today we are joined by Paul Gratz of the Gratz Gallery in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Some interesting exhibits and some great stories to share. We've had a chance to catch up with Paul leading up to this episode. And Paul, we're really excited to have you here with us today.
I am glad to be here. I enjoy speaking with you.
Awesome. So let's start at the beginning. We'd love to hear a little bit about, just to give our audience a little bit of your background, how you found your way into the world of art and everything that you do.
All right. Well, in the beginning, I was interested mainly in woodworking, and I did some restoration of some antiques when I was in high school and in college. I would see a chair in my neighbor's garage, and I'd trade them cutting their grass to get the chair, and then I would work on the chair. I did caning, I did some refinishing, and then I started. A friend of mine was really into antiques, and we would go down to Freeman's auction down on Chestnut Street. So we would usually go there on a Wednesday. So I learned a lot from looking at the art and the antiques and looking at the back of the paintings. And then I would study as well on the side. I had gone to Temple University for liberal arts, didn't really care for it. I wasn't exposed to the arts. I was more of a jock. I played football and baseball and basketball, which I still enjoy, but art was not really in my vocabulary. And through my friend, he introduced me to the antiques, and I studied different periods of furniture. So I started to learn on my own. And then in college, I had an art history course, and I got really fascinated with art. And I had been working construction, and I was laid off, and my friend's brother was a painting conservator. And I used to watch him work, and I would actually get him clients, bring him people that had paintings that he would work on. And over a period of time, I ended up apprenticing with him over a 4-year period. He also did gold leaf and gilding. So I also learned how to do traditional water gilding using clay and Rabiskin glue, and I learned oil gilding. So we'd restore paintings and frames. And after that, I moved on to another apprenticeship with a gentleman from the Philly Art Museum. Worked with him for a couple of years. And then I went on further to study with a gentleman that was a conservator in New Brunswick. And he had known Gustav Berger, who was a gentleman that invented this product called Biva. Years ago, we would use wax, hot wax, and resin to do linings of paintings, where you would actually melt the wax, use irons with the painting face down. And a lot of times you couldn't tell how hot it was or how much pressure. A lot of paintings, unfortunately, have been ruined over time using the hot wax method. And then there was a time when they invented a hot table, which is a big aluminum plate with heating elements and vacuum, where you could actually have the painting face up and you control the heat and the pressure. So I actually had made a couple tables. I have 3 now that I use, different sizes. But I went and studied with this gentleman named Gustav Berger. And then I had actually taken a course with him up in Skaneateles that he was giving to another conservation firm. And I learned how to use Biva. And now Biva has pretty much replaced the use of wax. It's a thermoplastic adhesive. It's reversible. The whole idea with conservation is everything you do is reversible. You want to do as little as possible when you approach an artwork to keep its integrity and its value. So it's a fine line between restoration and conservation. They're used interchangeably. Restoration, I consider more of an extensive job. If something's really damaged and you have no other choice, you're going to have to use a lot of in-painting and a lot of repair to an object. But the idea is with conservation to do as little as possible and that it is reversible. There were a lot of linings done years ago. I know the Gross Clinic, the famous Thomas Eakins painting, was actually glued down to masonite, and they had to use saws very carefully to cut away the plywood. And I had an instructor at the academy, Lou Sloan and Peter Payon. They were younger. They actually took scalpels to remove the remaining plywood and glue from the back of the Gross Clinic, and then it had to be lined again. It's a huge painting, but it's things change, technology changes, methods change, and hopefully people can keep up with that. So I went through my apprentices, learning to do painting conservation and gilding. And I've worked for a lot of different museums. I worked at Princeton University for 30 years. And I also decided at the time I was involved with Pennsylvania Impressionism that I would open an art gallery. So about 40 years ago, we opened up in New Hope, Pennsylvania, right by the train station. We were there for about 10 years. Beautiful town, wonderful location. We moved to Doylestown. And then over the years, as the internet has progressed, I have moved the studio to my home property because we sell a lot online, and I actually have more people that come here than would come to Main Street. So we are out here at 5230 Silo Hill Road, and we do conservation, and we also have a gallery as well. So that's long story short. Yeah.
And it's when we got a chance to talk to you before, you had mentioned how some of the restoration work that you've done in some of the estates that you've acquired is also a huge value add, because you're bringing art that could have potentially been lost now back. It seems like there's a real craftsmanship there, and also potentially a real niche is for your gallery. Is that do you consider that a niche, that you do the conservation? You've also done restoration work. Does that give you an edge over other galleries, especially when buying the work?
I think it does in a lot of ways. It's my advantage, but it's also the joy of what I do, is to take something that would possibly be discarded and bring it back to life again. And, for people that inherit paintings, that we had 2 people today with 3 paintings they just acquired from someone passing. So they're actually, personal artifacts that belong in the family. So it's a joy to me to bring something back to life, but it is an advantage to me too, as well. The latest collection that I bought of over 200 paintings had been in a barn for 30 years, and they were dirty and they weren't in a good environment. There were some moisture issues, so there was mold involved, but there probably would have not been anyone able to buy the collection because the cost of the conservation would have been more than prohibitive, in the value of it. So, but we, fortunately for me, the conservation can bring in people that sell paintings or want to buy paintings or they want framing. So We can do the gilding, the framing. We can do appraisals. I don't feel it's a conflict of interest for me to buy and sell art. I've had people say that, but that's if you don't have any integrity. I don't know who else would be better suited to tell you what the condition of a painting is than a conservator. So I feel that, we do a one sheet when we sell a painting that states the condition of the painting, whether it's been lined or, restored. We tend not to buy a lot of art that needs extensive in painting, and we guarantee everything we sell. So I feel that it only makes sense to be able to speak intelligently about the condition of a painting, as it really does affect the value of the artwork. Again, less is more, and it's the same with anything: cars, stamps, coins, it's books. The condition is a large part of the value of any type of asset that you have. So, yes, I think it's a great benefit for me that I can do conservation as well. But we're sort of a one-stop fine art establishment, and we can take care of all the needs that a collector would have. And it's been a great ride. We've been very fortunate.
And thank you for sharing all of that. And the thing that Alex and I loop back to from our first conversation was the idea of the craftsman, and you know what I mean, like you being a craftsman. And obviously you've been in business for 35 years, buying and selling art. So I imagine not many people that have that front row seat to what makes people tick. So do you, what's your take on the degree? We were talking a little bit about something along this lines right before we started recording, but the degree of the craftsmanship of the artists themselves. So like, what degree do you believe that has in the making it factor of an artist?
Trying to understand your question, but a lot of artists are taught about techniques and materials. I think it's important that an artist is trained as to how to prepare a canvas and how to paint in the long run for the integrity of the piece itself. Again, I was in a wonderful gallery in New York that had Hudson River painting, and they have a lot of the artists that painted along the Hudson River, but they were luminous, and the layers of paint, the glazing is extraordinary, and the detail. So my feeling again, craftsmanship is really important. Even with, I had a great artist named Leonard Nelson, and he's an abstract artist, but the layers of paint that he applied, he would work on a painting over a 2-year period. He'd work on 6 large paintings at a time. And he would build up layers and layers of paint. And he would say that the bottom brings you up to the top, and the top takes you back down to the bottom. I've had people say a 5-year-old could paint that. But in fact, each color was very clean and deliberately placed. And even though it was abstract, the amount of craftsmanship was incredible. And I don't think I can even paint a painting like that. So craftsmanship is, to me, very important.
What do you think the effect is on its value? Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm thinking of another thought, though. Sometimes it's just more of the marketing and the hype that creates the value of. We had discussed the book that I just read called Boom, about the art market in the late 60s, 70s of some of the earlier painters and how they became so valuable. And again, it's very subjective, but it's amazing to me that a Rothko can bring $50 million, but you could buy a Botticelli for probably 8-10 million. I mean, it's a whole other world when it comes to valuation of what art is worth. And again, it's mainly branding. So that's another question within itself. But I feel that craftsmanship's really important. I mean, you could even look at a Pollock painting and say, his technique and his craftsmanship is what makes his paintings valuable. He came up with the drip idea of painting. There are a lot of artists that I see that mimic what he does as well. Again, art is fascinating because it's very subjective.
Yeah. And then I guess in why some artists make it and some don't, seems like, okay, so you have this level of craftsmanship or talent, let's say, to get you to a certain point, but then the rest of it is marketing and hype. And what's really interesting is timing and location. It seems, at least historically, has been timing and location. You look at Pollock, he started and then died in 1954. And a lot of abstract artists didn't even start their first abstract painting until that time. So he was ahead of the curve and the market was hot on abstract artists during that time before it moved into pop art. So wondering in terms of if you're trying to make it as an artist, how relevant is it to be part of what's hot now? What's attractive now? Do you have to be on that path now and also be in the right location in one of the art centers of the world? Or can you make it online? So that's a two-part question, but I wanted to get your thoughts overall on this.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I can give you a ton of examples of artists that went to New York and showed at the time with Peggy Guggenheim and then Betty Parsons. Arthur B. Carles from the Academy is an amazing modernist. He taught a lot of different artists. He was part of the Stiglitz group with George O'Keeffe and John Marin in New York, and all those artists bring huge money. He decided to come back to Philadelphia. His paintings don't bring anywhere near the same amount of money, even though he showed at the same time with those people. So I would say, and I've learned this, there are certain art centers in the nation. New Mexico is a huge art center. There's over 250 galleries there. And they have a reach to Chicago and Texas because it's probably, maybe an hour and a half, 2-hour flight to LA. I think Florida, again, it's a wealthy center. A lot of New Yorkers and people from the Hamptons go down there in the wintertime. So there are certain areas, I think, that are more productive, I would say, and that there's more of an interest for art. And the reality is people that collect art tend to be more affluent. And it's just basic common sense. New York, Florida, Santa Fe, possibly Chicago, maybe LA, though I don't quite I've been out there. I don't quite understand it. LA is sort of spread out. I don't think there's really a focus. I think they try lately to have a center, but it's so spread out. But again, I love Philadelphia. It's culturally rich. I don't understand. There used to be a neighbor section in the Inquirer. There was a lovely woman named Victoria Donahoe that actually went to the Academy. This woman was like 80 some years old, and she had red hair. She was delightful. She would take the train from Philly and come to our gallery. She wore little sneakers. She would write reviews about shows in the area for the neighbor section in Philadelphia. And she was wonderful, but they cut out the neighbor section. If you look up the Inquirer now, they have an entertainment section, but they don't really have an arts section. They may cover arts once in a while, but I feel that it's a really difficult town if you're an artist, unfortunately. And I'm born and bred here. I love it. I love the Academy. I love the Philly Art Museum. It's a world-class museum. We have the Barnes now. They're opening the Calder. I just don't understand, even Philly Magazine or Philly Style rarely cover any of the arts here. I feel that it's more of a sports town. I love sports. I love the Eagles. I love Rocky. I'm always amazed when I go past the statue and how many people are lined up. They even have like a little trailer now with swag for Rocky. Everybody runs up the steps and they do the Rocky dance, but they don't go inside the museum. It's just it is the way it is. And I understand that. And I would say Boston is very similar. I've done some art shows there, not really successful. They have an amazing, they have Copley from, the early period of American art. They have a wonderful museum there. They have the Isabel Gardner Museum. They have the whole early group of American Impressionists, even before Pennsylvania Impressionists, some extraordinary artists from that area. But I feel that it's more of a sports town. And reality is reality. New York is the center of the art world. And there's no doubt about that to me. So I think, not to discourage anyone, but I really don't think Philadelphia promotes its artists as much as maybe they should. And it's really sort of a shame to me.
Got it. Yeah, that all makes a ton of sense. There's like all these layers of timing, marketing, like all of that piled on top of each other. It definitely makes a lot of sense. And, kind of adding another layer on, the deceased versus still alive question in that too, so the artist that kind of triggered this whole conversation with Alex and I was C. Ronald Bechtel, big in the Philadelphia area, big player in the abstract expressionist movement, started a group, was part of other group, like he was in and amongst all these artists, and the timing kind of seems like it's there. It's a little off. We can touch on that in a little bit. The talent definitely seems there. His work still exists. If you're watching the video, some of it is over Alex's head right now. So it's still holding up, still, it was very well done, but still virtually unknown as an artist. But then you have cases like Lynne Mapp Drexler, of the same era, but there was, good work, everything that can be said about it, but, that sells for these astronomical numbers. So, I don't know if there's a question in that rambling, but there's, what's your take on that scenario? Why does someone, both of these folks are deceased, so what's why? I guess that's the question at the end. Why?
I have the answer. I know a lot more than I need to know about Lynne Drexler. I like her work. I only know because I had a client bring me 5 paintings to be appraised. Decided to look into that situation. That particular artist was only bringing maybe $20,000, $30,000 tops at auction before 2021. Someone fortunately got the estate in the hands of the right people that are connected in New York City. People that had either worked at Sotheby's or Christie's, had major clients that they were able to convince, and the value of that particular artist. She has an interesting story. The work's very solid. But the facts are the facts, and it doesn't matter. It's just the reality of America. You play golf and you join a golf country club and you meet people that are affluent and you make deals on the golf course. So it's just the way business is done. If you have enough money you can make anyone or anything much more. You're in marketing. It's just a matter of marketing. And it's just a matter of how deep your pockets are. Again, and if you're affluent, you're connected with other affluent people. And if you can convince them of your story or of the artwork, then you can prevail and you can make a market. It takes time to build a market, no matter who they are. But again, I will tell you something now, and I'm not afraid to say it. I had found an estate of an artist many years ago. I approached a local institution about the artist. They told me, without even seeing the artwork, that if we could give them $1 million, that they would be able to put a show on for us because the institution needed money. And I understand that. But this is the way it works. And I'm not going to dance around it. I could have had a show for a particular artist that I discovered if I would have given the institution $1 million. So follow that through. You spend $1 million and you have a show at the museum. Does that really mean that artist is going to become more valuable? I don't know. I don't think so. If you want to get back to your question about Lynne Drexler, she didn't have any museum shows. She didn't really even have a book. There's a lovely lady in Texas that handled the estate that I know, and wasn't getting really any traction. She had the estate before anybody. And then it's a matter of connecting with someone that is connected to wealthy people. And it takes time. So, getting a museum show, I know a gentleman that has an estate. He's very angry that none of the institutions will take the exhibition, but that's not how you go about it. There's thousands of artists like the ones I have and you have that want to have an exhibition. If you knew somebody on the board or you were related to someone, you might get an exhibition. It's the way the world works, whether you like it or not. There are thousands of artists from the Pennsylvania Academy of Art that I think are incredible that have never had a show. Even some of the instructors at the Pennsylvania Academy of Art. Hugh Breckenridge is one of my favorite artists. He's amazing. He was an early impressionist. He had a school in Fort Washington with Thomas Anschutz. He's amazingly colorful. Up into like the 20s, he did impressionism. Then way before anybody, he became a modernist and almost abstract. There's like two different periods of his work. He taught at the Academy for 30 years. Lately, his prices have gone up, I think, based on the fact of the quality of his work. And, some people are aware of his historic significance, but nobody's ever promoted him. A lot of his work was burned in a fire in Texas, so there's not a lot out there. But again, getting back to Lynne Drexler, I believe there's over 1,000 artworks. I'm not sure, which is pretty incredible. And again, through researching for the appraisal I did, I found the story about her, and it's an amazing story. I mean, a painting of hers came out of a museum or historical society and it went to auction and brought $1.5 million. It's beyond my comprehension. I don't know, honestly, how that happens. I wish I had an answer, but I think it's wonderful. I like her artwork, but it shows me it takes really deep pockets to make an artist, I think, become really valuable, whether it was Gagosian or Leo Castelli with Warhol and Basquiat. And they're still having shows for Basquiat in different places, but it's a machine. I mean, it's a big machine, and they are the ones that set the pace and the taste for a lot of people. And again, it's sort of luck of the draw and who but it takes a lot of money to market an artist over time.
I want to bring this to another point that you had mentioned to us when we had spoke previously about the importance of the value of art, and we're talking about the auction prices and things like that. So Lynne Mapp Drexler's art goes at auction, sells for $1 million, and now it seems that it sets a new standard or like a new valuation for the art. Would you mind sharing with us the story of you had shared with us a story where someone had put their relatives, I don't know if it was their mother's, father's work, to a local auction, and it did the complete opposite.
Well, that's sort of the downfall. Unfortunately, I had a gentleman here who was related to a Philadelphia artist family, and there were quite a few pieces in the collection. I had actually sold this particular artist. It was a family of brothers that were all painters from Manioc. And the oldest brother's values were quite high in the heyday of Pennsylvania Impressionism, around 2003, 4, up to 2008. They brought considerable amount of money. So his brother actually brought decent prices. So the gentleman had his brother's work, 6 or 7 pieces, and I went to look at the auction records. Unfortunately, one of the relatives, I think a granddaughter, possibly a daughter of the artist, put several hundred paintings in a local auction. And paintings that I would get $2-3 grand for sold at auction for $200 to $300. They flooded the market. Again, this is not something I think should be done. You don't dump 100, 200 paintings in an auction because you just ruined the market for that particular artist. I would have bought the paintings, but I told him I could only pay him what the paintings went for at auction. And he was very disappointed. People do things for different reasons. They probably had nowhere to store the artwork, which costs quite a bit of money. They also probably needed the money. But I think it's a disservice to the artist to dump and flood the market with such a huge collection. Would have been better probably to parcel it out a little bit more, perhaps. But again, this is a fairly well-known painter and a competent painter. So this is the opposite of what was done with Lynne Drexler. Instead of buying it, bringing it along, trying to establish a market, they destroyed the market. And it happens time after time. But what I feel for the people that own these collections, because it's so expensive to store the art and maintain the art. And if you don't have the money, what else are you supposed to do? And there are so many collections and artists that are offered to me, on a weekly basis. And people don't seem to understand how difficult it is and how long it takes to actually brand an artist and make an artist. And your competition is off the chart. It's like music. You probably know a ton of musicians that are fantastic. Are they going to make it, or do they get lucky and somebody hears one of their songs, or they know somebody at a label, or they know another musician that brings them along. And, I know a lot of musicians I think are better than a lot of the songs that I hear on the radio. It's very similar, and it's not complicated. It's just a matter of marketing and reaching the right people. It's frustrating if you have a collection and you're trying to make it happen. And it's common sense. If you have $1 billion, you can make an artist pretty well known. So
it's fascinating. Yeah, and at this,
it is.
Go ahead.
It's just the way it is.
I think it's fascinating how there's this, you have to know what you're doing. If you're trying to make it as an artist or trying to make an artist whose collection you have, whether through you acquired it after someone died or you purchased it, this concept with the auctions, which it seems started in like the mid or late 70s, now becomes this base, and you have to approach that very carefully. Even have the example of the Mugrabi family that owns close to 1,000 Warhols, right? That they can manipulate the market for Warhols by bidding them up, and because their whole collection just became more valuable.
Because it makes all the other ones worth more money. The musical chairs, though, in the end, I mean, so if they pass away and there are 800 Warhols or 1,000 Warhols, what happens to the Warhol market? It would be curious to see what happens.
Interesting. Yeah.
And you don't know. And let's face it, fashion changes, taste changes. Arts and crafts, furniture wasn't popular. Stickly furniture wasn't really popular. And then people got interested in it. A stickly chair would bring $250. Somebody got interested, it was $2,500. Then some celebrities got into collecting and their chair went to $25,000. Now nobody really wants arts and crafts furniture anymore. They want Harry Bertoya or Nakashima or Paul Evans. So everything changes, over a period of time. Some things hold their value. And again, it's a matter, are there galleries promoting arts and crafts still? Or, same with Pennsylvania Impressionism. I love it dearly, but a lot of the people that collected are older. They've passed on. Some of the museums that represented these artists aren't doing shows as much. Good quality artworks from any period, the best of the best, will always bring good money. But fashion and taste change, and it's hard to say what would be next, what's coming up next. And who's going to push it and say that this is what you should buy?
In all of this, and the insights you're providing it's becoming a lot clearer for us. And we're trying to distill down to somewhat of a framework, at least of the factors that are involved, like the levers that you have at your disposal if you're trying to make it as an artist. So it seems like timing, location, you have to have a careful approach to the value of your art and what you do at auctions. There's the story, and maybe most important than all, the connections. As so far we've talked about all those except for the story. We've mentioned it a couple of times, but can you go further into the story? And maybe as you're buying art, or even on the selling art side, how do you approach the story of an artist? Like, what are some of the factors that I guess are needed to make for a good story?
I've done this for 40 years. There are a lot of different stories for each artist. Normally it's that they went to a certain art school. They exhibited here or there. Most of the artists that go that have shown in New York become more important of the different galleries that they've been in. Then there's their personal story and what they were involved in their lifetime. For me, our Peter Miller story is absolutely incredible because it's got so many layers and different directions. I've had a lot of different artists over the years, and most of them are pretty straightforward about where they went to school and who they studied with and where they exhibited. It's pretty standard fare for most painters. The Peter Miller story I have is so much more complicated, and it's more interesting to me. That's a long story in itself, but she painted out west, and she was involved with the Native American Indians. She knew the scientists from the Manhattan Project, which is fascinating at this time period. She knew Robert Oppenheimer and Niels Bohr. She really believed in magic and ESP and telemetry. It's just this is a great story because there's so many different dimensions to it. Again, She was from an affluent family. She knew writers. She knew actors. She traveled the world. To me, it's one of the most fascinating stories that I've run into in 40 years. So to me, the story is important. I'm always interested in the backgrounds of what, certain artists have done over time. And again, I don't know. It's, I'm trying to understand what direction your questions go with. It's not an easy thing to, promote an artist and to make an artist known. And, I'm talking more about traditional art because that's what I know about. Living artists is a whole nother thing. I know in New York, there's a big scene where some of the artists are bringing huge money that are contemporary painters. And again, that's through the promotion of some of the galleries there. I'm not that familiar with that part of the art market because that's not what I deal in. I get approached all the time by artists that want to come into the gallery. They know my name and I'm branded, but I actually don't have that market. And I have to tell them, I can't really help you. I don't deal in that particular area. I would, if there's any artists watching this that are interested in the marketing and that sort of thing, I would say you need to really research and qualify the galleries that you approach, because you're not only you're pissing people off, but you're also wasting your time, approaching a gallery that can't really sell your artwork. So you can't just randomly send out an email to different galleries because you're wasting everybody's time. You have to pinpoint. If you're a contemporary artist and you paint abstract, you need to find that type of gallery. There's some wonderful galleries in our area, but they handle mainly people that paint impressionist landscape, and they're very successful at in a certain price point. And I see that that's very similar throughout the country. I think there are a lot of galleries. I was in Florida bopping around that sweet spot of like $1,000 to $15,000. People can go in a gallery and they're comfortable with, buying a nice piece for their home, primarily decorative. And that's okay. But when you're getting into spending more money as an investment, that's just a whole nother different world in itself. So, in the New Hope, Lambertville area, some artists are interesting. They open their own gallery. They cut out the middleman, which is usually 50%. And, but most artists don't want to be business people. They want to create art. And I admire the ones that try, and they have their own gallery. So hopefully they have a studio and they also have a gallery in the same space. And that way they actually, they cut out the middleman. But they're quick to learn that it takes a lot of energy and marketing and time to run a gallery and to actually, make it work. So that's another option for living artists, to try, is to have your own. And again, the internet. I'm fascinated. I look at Artsy, I'm just blown away. There's thousands and thousands of artists. And it seems like the price point, and I don't know whether they work through the gallery or not, is like $5,000 for a big abstract painting. And you can look at page after page after page of similar artists. It is so competitive. It's amazing. It's luck of the draw, I guess. I don't know. Quality counts, but the competition is absolutely fierce.
And how you stand out there is interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, and mentioning the world of buying art online, the internet, and all of that. Kind of coming into the time that we're in now. There's a few factors at play here too, but do you have a sense of, did COVID impact how people interact with buying art, or did that kind of remain steady?
I made it through 2008 when the economy crashed. I don't know if you remember, they're called haunches, where people were buying groups of mortgages and taking them low class mortgages and making them top class. It was almost like a Ponzi scheme, and they were giving loans to anybody. It was a house of cards, and it collapsed, and the stock market crashed. And I had a really rough time, as did everybody else. So when COVID came, I was like, oh my God, it's the end of the world, that I'll be out back hunting deer, to eat with. Really, I thought it was like, again, like the end of the world. This was like so bizarre. You can't even make it up. And I didn't know what I was like. Everybody, I was frightened, scared, had no idea what was going on. You couldn't even find toilet paper. It was like bizarre, like who would ever think this would ever happen? And it turned out I had like two of the best years I ever had, because people were home in their underwear buying art online. I was shocked. The thing that happened was COVID was over. People started traveling a lot more to Europe and different places. I saw a dip in my market and my sales, which I would never in a million years thought that's what would have happened. So it turned out to be an actually good thing for me. But it also, like, the malls killed Main Street years ago. And now the malls are dying because of, I think, COVID and Amazon. And even I was in New York the other day, and some of the bars I used to go to were gone. COVID killed them. A lot of the stores are empty. I was actually pretty shocked. But I think what happened, people changed the way they bought, and they buy online. And Amazon has killed the malls. They're going to be pickleball courts and condos. I do it. I go online and I buy things and have them delivered to my house. So the whole internet has changed. We actually totally redid our website for that reason. I was involved early on getting involved with some of the online platforms that sell art and antiques a long time ago. And we position ourselves pretty well, and we sell quite a bit of art all over the world from our website, far more than I do with people walking into my gallery. It's just the reality of our lives. It's a whole new way, whether you like it or not. I miss the interaction with people, but I'm trying to work it. I'm trying to work the internet as much as I can. And without it, I would not be in business right now. I'm serious. And I miss those days. I really enjoyed, before the internet, we had shows, people would wait in line, they would come in, we'd have a party. It was fun. We'd have a band. We rocked out New Hope. It was like the old days, it was, I'm an old guy now, but it was fun. People would come and look at the art, and they actually would buy it. And then it went to the internet, and it blows me away. I don't know if I could buy a painting on the internet without looking at it and the brushwork and actually seeing the artwork itself. But I've only had one piece ever returned to me, and it was a print. I don't know why. It was like a Japanese print, but I've never had a painting. And knock on wood, we sell all the time. They don't return. They usually love the piece and they keep it. But our internet sales far outpace any sales in the gallery itself.
If you're trying to make it as an artist today, is it still relevant to be in the major art centers in the US or in the world? Or do you think that someone with the right marketing approach can actually make it purely online by living in Philadelphia and then making it as an international artist?
I hate to say it, but the galleries have the panache and they have the connections to the people with you're talking about a lot of different price points here. Mm-hmm. When you say make it, what does that mean? You mean make a living and you can pay your bills? You can do that anywhere, and you can have your own website. And if you're lucky enough, you can sell your artwork and have a happy life. But if you're talking about hitting the big time, I don't see how you do that without having a connection to somebody that is connected, and there's
Great.
Like if you can get into Gagosian Gallery, I think you'll be fine. But how many hundreds of thousands of people want to have their artwork there? So
Absolutely.
It's just pretty logical. It is so competitive. Using the internet is a fascinating thing, and it works. But again, so you have a website. How do people find your website? I'm on platforms and they're amazing. I don't know. I'm not technical, but through their different ways with cookies and how they market, I'll be looking up something like you do on your phone, and next thing it's all over your computer. I mean, they can track what you look at and that's a whole nother science in itself. Do you hire somebody to do that if you're an artist and you'll pop up? That's a whole nother world that I don't know much about, but I do know that the internet works for me. And we spent the money to redevelop our website to hopefully think that the keywords and, the exposure there, but we still do a lot of print advertising. And I never know. I mean, I'll get somebody that comes in with a painting, and I ask them how did they find me? A lot of them say they Googled me online. Or others will say I saw an ad in the local paper. So I just don't, if you have a website, how do you drive people to that website? Because there's thousands of websites. So that's a whole marketing issue that I'm not a marketer, but we branded ourselves over 40 years. I still, believe in print advertising. I get my news online for the most part. I don't really have a paper subscription to anything. And that's problematic for local newspapers. That's a whole nother question itself. But I think what I see with some successful artists that I know, they're contemporary artists, and it only makes sense. Instead of just having one gallery, say in Philly, that represents you, I have people that have a gallery out in Carmel that they work with, or they have a gallery up in Nantucket. So they have different areas. Charleston is an art center for contemporary art in Carolina. So, if you're not selling in one spot, maybe you will be selling in another spot. So if you limit yourself to just one area, then you're limiting yourself. So, and again, how do you do that? You have to make connections with people that have galleries, and you have to contact art galleries. So that's one suggestion. If you're an artist and you want to make it, is I think you need to find different areas to expose your art in.
Yeah, this has been great, and we definitely would love to have you on for another episode to really dig into the Peter Miller story. Just we have a lot. We feel like we have a lot more to cover with you, so we're definitely.
Well, I'm interested. If you want to go more into the contemporary art world, though, Debbie Morton in Philly, I chose her to work with. We're working together on the Peter Miller exhibit.
Awesome.
She's been at it for a while. She is a powerhouse of energy. She's really a brilliant woman and delightful. She's, it's fascinating because we do totally different things, but we're working together. And she doesn't stop. She has amazing ideas. She tries very, very much to make her gallery part of the Philadelphia art community, which I think is commendable.
Awesome.
And, I'm glad that I'm working with her, but I think she can answer some of your questions better than I can, because I'm from a different background. So it would be great to have you talk with her as well.
Awesome. Yeah, we're definitely very much looking forward to setting that up and continuing the conversation. And for what it's worth, we found you on Google. We were looking for folks that represent abstract expressionists, and your site came up about
Peter Miller.
About Peter Miller. Yep. So that was definitely good work on that. So this was an absolute pleasure. On behalf of Alex and I, thank you for taking the time out of your day today to talk with us, and we look forward to more future conversations.
Hey, thank you. Good luck to you guys. I hope you had fun with this.
Absolutely.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Famous or Forgotten podcast. We hope you found it insightful, educational, entertaining, and everything else that goes into a great podcast. We are always looking for folks to provide insights into this conversation around artists and what makes them succeed or not. If you feel like you have some insights to provide to this show, feel free to check the podcast notes below, or if you're watching on YouTube, in the show description. Our contact information is there. You can get in touch, and we'd love to start the conversation with you and allow you to provide any kind of insights that you think might be helpful. Stay tuned, and we'll see you on the next episode.